Let's talk about Scout, a climbing and shedding card game that's all about running a circus. Welcome to Brains on Games. I'm Dr. Brian McDonald, and this episode we're going to talk about a trick-taking game because it's October, so we're doing trick or treat at Brains on Games. So this is a game, it's called Scout. It's a circus themed, it's an award-nominated card game. And it's sort of, it fits under trick takers if you take kind of a broad definition of trick taking games. So here's the small box for Scout by Oink Games. This is a game for between 2 and 5 players, and you can play with kids aged 9 and up. Games only take about 20 minutes, so it's a quick one, and you can play multiple games on any given game night. Let's take a deeper look at Scout by Oink Games. Scout is a light game where you're trying to earn the most points over a number of rounds equal to the number of players. Like I said, it's between 2 and 5 player game. It's a game where you've got these cards that have different numbers on either side. And what you're doing, unlike other trick takers, every time I play a trick taking game, I get the cards in my hand and then I organize them by suit. But there's not really suits in Scout. Instead, you're not allowed to organize your cards, first of all. And instead, you've got to wait until all the cards are dealt out before you pick up your hand. And then before you start playing the game, you choose, do I want to keep the cards right side up like this, or do I want to turn my entire hand upside down and use the numbers on the bottom? It's easy to tell. I was worried at first when I opened this up and I had read the rules saying, oh, you have to flip your whole hand. But the numbers are very clear from the top and the bottom, so you don't have to spread everything out in front of you. You can see here's the top number, but the number that's on the bottom is right underneath. So you don't have to spread all the cards out too much. You can still hold them in your hand and figure it out, which would be an issue for younger kids for sure. But you've got these colorful cards. They do have names on them, and some circus, some of them are clowns or people who ride unicycles or people who are trapeze artists. But really, this is much more abstract than that. And we found ourselves very rarely actually looking at what was on those cards other than the numbers. Each player is going to start with 3 of these little chits, and those are worth victory points at the end of each round. And they get this little clown car. And the clown car, it says Scout and Show on the back. And I'll explain what that all means. Once you've decided whether you're going to hold your hand upside down or right side up, then the first player is going to play a card or some cards. What you're trying to do in this game, it's a shedder, meaning that you're trying to get rid of cards from your hand as much as you can. And you do that by playing cards in runs, adjacent cards, adjacent numbers. So in this case, I might play the 6, 7, and 8. Those are all touching each other. I can't grab the 9 from over here because there's a 4 in between. It's even more powerful if you can get identical numbers on your cards. So if you play 2 7s, 3 7s is going to be more powerful than a 6, 7, and 8. If I did have a hand like this, it might be even better if I led with that 4, and then I get the 4 out from in between the 6, 7, 8. Now I have a 6, 7, 8, 9, and it is a climber as well as a shedder. So if I play this 4, other players have to play a better hand if they want to be the active player. So you could play a single card that's a higher number. You could play a pair of cards or 2 adjacent cards, or the greater the number of cards, the more powerful that active set is. Chances are that 6, 7, 8, 9 is going to be pretty powerful. It's not very often that you get 4 cards in a run like this that are adjacent to each other in your hand. So this is a pretty good play. I'm probably going to earn some points because I'm going to be able to replace whatever the active set was, which might have been 2 cards. Usually you don't get very often you don't get 4 cards in a row like this. Sometimes you'll get 3. So this is going to be a powerful hand that's going to be hard for anyone to beat. But the other thing that you can do, so this is called showing. When you play the higher card, because it's a climber, you play the better hand, and you put that out on the table to replace the active set. That's the show in this game. You're putting on a circus show. But you can also scout. And if you can't beat a hand that's on the table, if you can't beat the active set, or if you choose not to, you can take one of the cards from either end. So that's scouting. You're scouting that circus performer. You're putting them into your hand. What's neat about scouting, though, is that A, you can put that card anywhere you want in your hand, and you can turn it upside down if you want to. So it might be useful, more useful for you, even though I played this as a 6, it might be more useful for you to play a 1 instead. If another player scouts a card like that from the active set, then the player who owns that active set is going to get one of these little chips, which is worth a victory point at the end of the game. But what else is happening here is that the active set is becoming less and less powerful. Now you need 3 cards to beat this one. It's still hard because it's a 9 at the top. So probably there's going to be a couple of players who are going to scout from here, and I'm going to get a victory point for each time someone does that. Once per round, you're going to get to use this little clown car. So you can discard this or flip it over to show that it's already been used. And the scout and show car, what that's going to allow you to do is to scout a card from the active set and immediately play a better hand once you've done that. So you can sort of flip the game on its head a little bit by scouting and showing on the same turn, but you only get to do that once. Play continues until one player has run out of cards or none of the other players can beat the active set. So if all they can do is scout but they can't play anything, that's going to end the round. Then you get to calculate points. You lose a point for each card that's in your hand. You gain a point for each of these little chips that you have or that you've earned along the way, and for each card that you've captured by replacing the active set on the table. So you're going to be doing some plussing and minusing when you're calculating your points at the end. If nobody has 0 cards in their hand, if the way the round ends is that no one can beat the active set and all they do is scout instead of showing and replacing those cards, then the player who owns that active set does not lose points for the cards in their hand. So they don't get penalized if everyone else chooses to end the round, but the other players do. You'll use these little chips, these little victory point counters to keep track of your points, and cleverly they have the negative points on the other side. You will find after some rounds, and we found when we played it, sometimes there would be a player who was at negative points, but the game can swing pretty wildly, right? Because it's based on the luck of the draw in terms of which cards you get and which cards you manage to scout from the active set. What skills are you working on when you play a game like Scout? Well, this is a game that does involve some executive functioning skills. I mean, let's be honest, it is a card game where there's a lot of luck involved, but there are some of those executive functions involved. What are those executive functions? Planning ahead, budgeting your actions, trying to work as efficiently as possible to maximize those results. Those are good examples of the executive functioning skills. So you've got that idea of, well, do I want to play a low card now so that my hand's going to look better next time? Do I want to scout a card instead of playing? When do I play my clown card so that I can scout and show on the same turn? So it is a game where you are doing a little bit of planning and kind of trying to tackle things in an organized way. It does involve some working memory as well. Working memory is an executive function, of course, but working memory is the whiteboard in your mind where you keep information so that you can juggle it somehow. And the working memory involvement here is in those calculations of points, because mental math requires working memory skills, but also in that decision at the beginning, like which upside down or right side up hand am I going to use? Final thoughts about Scout. Well, this is a game that it's not a traditional trick taker. So with trick takers, of course, you're playing a card and the high card is going to win. And here you're playing a set of cards and you win by replacing that active set with a better set. It does have those very colorful cards, but it's quite abstract. You know, like I said earlier, we never really found ourselves, except for a laugh, we weren't really looking at the names on the cards or whether they were trapeze artists or trampoline acrobats or what have you, or clowns. Some of them are clowns. I feel like the number 1 cards have clowns on them often. But it is an interesting choice at the beginning of each hand, whether you're going to go upside down or right side up. It is an interesting choice which cards you're going to take, and the fact that you can slot those anywhere into your hand, again, upside down or right side up. And it is a game where there's wide swings in points and there's so much luck involved that even the younger kids are sometimes going to be able to win some hands. But I mean, that's true in any card game. There's luck involved. You can mitigate it to an extent if you're skilled at the game. There are some, there are some tricks that you can play. Like I showed you at the beginning, I had that 4, and by getting rid of that, all of a sudden I had a great set that I could play. But it's sort of an interesting game that's quick to learn and quick to teach, that the younger kids can understand. There's no real reading involved. The rule sheet is like this double-sided thing that fit inside that tiny box that I showed you at the beginning. So this is a super easy one to get to the table, and we found ourselves playing multiple rounds because it's so quick to play. Are there downsides to Scout? Well, for some folks, maybe the fact that the theme is kind of tacked on to this one, like we never really thought about. It doesn't feel like you're running a circus or scouting performers to be in your circus. I mean, that's the theme of the game, but the theme is kind of stuck on there. There is a lot of luck involved, and I know, it's a card game with lots of luck. I think there's more luck involved than some of the other trick takers we've talked about this month, where you can skillfully play some cards, or the order in which you play your cards is going to have some impact on the outcome. Here, there's a bit of skill, but there's lots of luck too, which is, like I said, great for evening the field for younger players, and it doesn't require too much thought to play the game. You can sit and have a nice time with your friends or with your family, and it is a family weight game, and I think for some folks, that's going to be a deal breaker. It's not complicated or strategic enough. But like I said, at the same time, the rules are simple and it's quick to play. It's a game that is better at 3 or 4 or 5 players. I think 4 or 5 is probably a really good number for this game. At 2 players, the rules are a little bit different, and it does change things around quite a bit. So we certainly had a better time when we were playing with 3 people, which was most of the time how we played the game. I think it would be even better at 4. That would be certainly ideal, but I never managed to get 4 people to the table to play Scout, so I didn't get to try it at that level. All we could think of, though, was, oh yeah, boy, it would be great if we had one more person at the table. Some of the folks that we were playing with thought, boy, it would be a lot better if you had 2 of these Scout and Show things. That would make the rounds a little bit longer. I mean, at the same time, the rounds would be longer, but then you don't get those negative points as much where you're stuck holding a bunch of cards in your hand. If you can Scout and Show on the same turn, that's going to, allow you to do some surprising things maybe, but you're going to find yourself shedding those cards a lot more if the rounds are longer, so you won't get as many of those negative points in that case. But overall, we had a really good time playing Scout. Like I said, it was kind of a unique style of trick taker that fits more under a broader definition of what a trick taker is. And we enjoyed the game. So we played it many, many times since I brought it home. So it was a fun one for us to try out. If you have any questions, if you have suggestions for other trick takers that I haven't talked about yet, or maybe that I haven't played before, if you have any questions or ideas about Brains on Games, you can, of course, leave them in the comment section below the video, or you can email me at brian@brainsongames.ca. Brainsongames.ca is the website. That's where future episodes will go, and the previous ones are up there already. Brains on Games is the Twitter handle and the Facebook page and the Instagram feed, so we're all over the place. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to be notified of future ones, you can head on over to YouTube and click that subscribe button. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully I'll see you next time.